Irene Cara and Fame. Really looking forward to my lunch break guest today. He's got so many fascinating stories to tell. He's the founder of the law firm Brittontime, Paul Britton. He graduated from the University of Law in Guildford in 2014. Now frequently acts in high-profile cases that attract extensive media coverage, offices in Brighton and Mayfair, and covers all areas of the law. Delighted to welcome Paul into the studio. Thanks so much for coming in.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me.
You have been involved in some astonishing cases, but first let's start off, because law wasn't your first career. You were doing something completely different. What went on?
Yeah, I mean, way back when I was 20, I was working for Peter Jones of the Dragon's Den at Phones International, and then moved to a company within the Daily Mail and General Trust, the FTSE 100, and decided to retrain as a solicitor in my late 20s.
Now, why would you do that? Because you were clearly very successful in what you were doing, and you'd established this career, and it's really hard to go back and start again.
It is, but I felt that I wasn't being challenged enough in the career that I was pursuing, and it was either medicine or law, and I didn't fancy working in hospitals, and so I went for law and I read law. But I wasn't going to be a lawyer. I thought I would go back into business later once I had a law degree.
Right.
And then one of my friends that I was at uni talked me into going to law school. And then I had some offers for training contracts when I finished. And I picked one of 3 offers that I had. And then it just railroaded or steamrolled into where I am now, sitting with you.
Have you ever had any regrets at all? I mean, you clearly, I think reading your history, you clearly love what you do.
I do, yeah. I mean, I love helping people. I mean, obviously, the worst thing about lawyers, I guess, is our fees and how much we charge, but we get really good results for our clients, and particularly financially vulnerable clients in divorce. That's where it's most satisfying.
Isn't that the saddest thing, though? I think let's start with yours, because what interests me about you is you are involved in such a wide, diverse area of the law, whereas most people, they specialise. They do family law, they do criminal law, they go into why do you sort of spread your wings across so many areas?
It's all just the law.
Yes.
I had talked to a senior barrister about this, and I said the same question to him: why do some lawyers just super specialise in divorce or employment or civil litigation? And he said, well, because they're frightened of doing other areas of law. It's what you don't know, and that's like quite intimidating for them. But it is all just the law, and it's quite easy, as long as you're prepared to apply yourself, it's quite easy to assimilate the law, and there's a lot of crossover.
But some of the cases that you've been involved in, so let's talk about, I mean, there was one I read that was really moving, which is an elderly person who is being ripped off by someone that they trust. But in order to take on that case, you have to do, I would imagine, hours and hours and hours of forensic investigation into exactly what's gone on. Yeah,
there's a lot of cases like that. Often when elderly couples reach 80s or 90s and one dies, then someone swoops in, and sometimes they look like a good Samaritan. I've had even relatives, sons of a deceased, and what happens when we do the probate is we find out that they've been abusing the accounts, they've got gambling addictions, and because the elderly person is so old, they just didn't realise what was going on. Some of the work that I do now is actually power of attorney work, so I manage the finances of elderly clients to make sure that there is none of that.
Do you know that's so important, isn't it? Something my parents did quite recently. We I have power of attorney over my mum's because she was concerned about the and you have to do it at the point where you are still very capable of making that decision.
Well, if the person given away the powers of attorney to you in your example, if your mother had lost capacity, she couldn't give you powers of attorney. You'd have to go to the Court of Protection and get an order.
Does your work make you cynical about human nature then? Because you are obviously dealing with some quite, people that probably on the surface come across as really lovely, and then you see the scurrilous goings on behind the scenes.
I've seen, yes, it makes you very cynical, and I've seen the worst of humanity. And couples that have been happily married for 25 years are now threatening each other with knives, scratching each other's faces, punching each other in the face. It's just, and they hate each other. But once they loved each other and they got married.
I find that's and there's children involved as well. When you've got children that are at the centre of all this, and you're trying to deal with this, and I suppose what you want is not just the best for your client, but the best for everybody that's involved in that horrific divorce situation.
The sad factor of children is the parents can't help, and they don't realise they're doing it sometimes, but use them as pawns and tools and mechanisms to punish the other party by stopping contact and things like that. And it doesn't matter. They're so blinded by it. It's, you shouldn't be telling your child that daddy doesn't want to see him or her, because he does. And it's like, oh yeah, but it's like there's no but. These are the children.
How do you deal with that then?
Delicately.
Yes, because it's not just the law, is it, that you have to know? There are so many skills in the job that you do. It's kind of
tough.
Being able to empathise, relate to people, understand people. There's a lot here.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to alienate your client, so you have to try and educate them in a very soft way. Sometimes material that we've done in the past, we've done big sections for Kensington Mums, one of the big mums networks, and those sorts of ways of expressing how you can deal and protect your children are very good ways, rather than, a lot of people don't respond very well to a male solicitor saying, especially to a mum, why are you telling me that? Why are you on his side? It becomes quite contentious. So sometimes written material is an easier way of educating.
Well, you sort of specialise in all areas. Do you have a particular favourite area?
Not all areas. I don't do.
Well, a lot of different areas.
Contentious
of law.
Areas.
Yes.
Yeah. Criminal defence. I'm lucky to have an accolade as Britain's top criminal defence lawyer, because we've done some big cases there. A favourite area. Divorce and criminal defence are probably my favourite areas.
So what attracts you about criminal defence, which again could be, I suppose, a controversial area?
It is the justice system in this country. I mean, this is a massive. You are like scratching the surface of a huge topic. The criminal justice system in this country, as sophisticated as it is, it doesn't always produce the right results. So it's just so important that people get a very good defence, because what you must be certain of is that they are, without any question of doubt, guilty of what they're being accused of. There are cases where I've had clients found guilty in the magistrates and they're just not guilty.
I think I feel quite shocked to think that. I mean, maybe I'm being a bit naive, but I've got a lot of faith in our justice system. And clearly, it can go wrong. And actually, I suppose some of those people that you are defending are some of our most vulnerable people, who, when you delve into their background, they never had really a chance in life. It does produce some, when people are involved, so magistrates, through people, emotions get involved rather than what the law is, and sometimes factual evidence. And I had a case recently where we had evidence we wanted to present to the court, and it was compelling to show that what had happened hadn't happened, and the court said it's too late to disclose it, we're not going to look at it. So they made a guilty verdict, even though there was evidence available that showed the opposite. And we're in the Crown Court now. It's an appeal that we're doing at the moment. We had a judge as our lunch break guest quite recently, and she was saying that in her court, sometimes she would see the parents of a teenager who'd been stabbed to death alongside the parents of the teenager that had done it. And you'd see whole lives, families just destroyed in an instant. And in a moment, and then you look at the run up to that, and it was just some stupid teenager doing something silly and not realising the impact that they were going to have. There are some heartbreaking situations that you face in law. Because
there's more than just one victim. I mean, although someone has been stabbed and has lost their life, now the people that are still alive, their lives are turned upside down, and the example that you just gave is actually quite a good example that those two families are. When you said alongside, like speaking, or
I think in the courtroom. So she was passing judgment on the person that had done the stabbing, but she looked into the eyes of both sets of parents and realised that they were, that there was grief on both sides.
And that's never. And although what happens in that courtroom for lawyers, it just becomes an event, a part of the job. What happens is going to be with those families forever. That's for life now. They will never forget what happened in that courtroom.
Are there ever cases that you don't want to take on?
Don't want to take on. No. I mean, I'll take on, as long as clients can fund the case, then...
Well, I'm just thinking about it then. Okay, so you delve into the person that has been financially abusing an older person.
Yeah.
How about defending that person that's done the abuse? That's difficult. This is the thing about law, isn't it?
You have to try and ensure that the justice system produces results that can be relied upon. If you know that the defendant has been given the best defence and all the stops have been pulled out, they are unequivocally guilty. You have to remember, back in the day when we used to hang people were hung wrongly of crimes that they didn't commit. Less severe now because we don't hang people anymore. But, prison isn't a luxury. There are criticisms about prisons being much more luxurious these days, but I can assure you they're not.
And no one wants their liberty. If you said to me, right, I'm going to put you into prison and I'm going to give you a telly and a PlayStation and all those, and I wouldn't want to go. This is the thing, isn't it? Nobody wants to be contained. No one wants to lose their liberty, access to their friends, their family. I think, however luxurious it is, it's not going to be nice being in a prison environment.
No.
One thing you've talked about actually is the rise in divorce, particularly among same-sex couples after the pandemic. What's been going on here?
So, divorce rates peaked back in 1993. We've never seen as many divorces as in that particular year. That was after the Thatcher government, I guess. So lots of properties had been repossessed. There was a cost of living crisis. Inflation was at an all-time high. During the pandemic years, an interesting fact, aside from the statistics, is that our practice as Brittontime solicitors, we were probably about 10% divorce cases and family-related cases. During those 2 years of pandemic, 2020, 2021, 2022, 60% of our workload became family-related work.
It's kind of, I suppose that's almost inevitable, isn't it? Because if you think about, every year, just after Christmas, a press release will come round to us saying the number of inquiries for divorce has gone up dramatically. You put people together and they're forced to spend time with each other, then all those little niggles become huge. And one thing I found quite interesting as well is that you've seen a big increase in the number of divorces as people retire. Suddenly thinking, he's really getting on my nerves now, he's not out the house, or she's getting on my nerves now, I'm with her all the time. That happens a lot, doesn't it? And actually I think it's quite a positive thing in a way, that people are thinking, I'm not just going to coast along for the saving my face into retirement. I'm going to enjoy my retirement and I'm going to be free and be my own person.
Yeah, I remember when I was a trainee, the first divorce case I had was an elderly woman, and she said, I've been the perfect mother. I've gone to all the school committees. I've done all the school lunches. I've cooked his dinners. I've kept the house clean. I've done the committees. I've done the school runs. She said, all I want now is a studio, my own space, and a studio where I can paint.
And what did he have to say about that now that his workhorse had disappeared into the ether?
Heartbroken. He was. She said she still loved him, but she wasn't in love with him.
Yeah.
And she, I was just I was almost in tears at the end of that.
Do you get like that sometimes?
Not anymore.
You've dealt with so many really, and is there a book in you as well? I'm thinking, because you have been involved in so many cases. A lot of these look like the sort of thing that you would watch in a drama series on the telly.
Yeah, I guess there is. I've had a few ghostwriters or whatever they call themselves say, would you like to do a book? I just don't know if now is the right time. There's more stories.
But of course, you've got your own legal firm, and that obviously presents its own challenges, takes up a lot of your time as well. Yeah,
it's been, so we started really 3 months before the lockdown, and it was just me, an administrator, and someone doing a bit of marketing, and we've gone from that to 30 employees in 3 years, from a turnover of about 250,000 to nearly 2 million now. So
that's a big, and I suppose what's crucial as well is getting the right team. Is that when it's your name at the top there, you've got to ensure that everyone that you employ is doing things exactly as you'd want to do it yourself. Yeah, we're a very client-centric firm, so we come to the office. There's no working from home. If you came to the office and knocked on the door and said, "I want to see my solicitor," a solicitor would come down to see you. You wouldn't get your solicitors working at home today. So we work the 9 till 5, Monday to Friday. We're always available. We speak to clients at weekends. Sometimes clients are surprised that we'll take calls at weekends, but it's just so focused. The firm is so focused on clients. What are you hoping then over the next year? Obviously, big development. You've grown hugely. What next? We just launched our immigration desk for immigration into the UK and to Australia. That seems to be taking off. We're getting, over the weekend, I think we had about 30 inquiries. We get on average about 2 or 3 inquiries a day for that. So recruiting for immigration is big. Our employment desk is becoming more and more popular as we start to represent larger names in the city from our Mayfair office. So we're going to grow the employment desk as well. Well, thank you so much for sparing the time and coming in. I've really enjoyed talking to you. Okay, thank you for having me. Thank you so much, Paul Britton, who's the Managing Director of Britton and Time.